The Rangers make way too many mistakes, and it costs them dearly in a 7-4 loss to the Washington Capitals. Plus, Ryan Lindgren and K'Andre Miller continue their subpar play.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1218 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you will get started with $200 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers go into D.C. and get off to a really strong start in this game. I feel like every Ranger game, and more specifically, every Ranger loss recently, it unfolds in one of two ways. Either they do what we saw today, they get off to a hot start, and you think, man, who is this team? Where have these guys been all season, right? And they get off to a strong start, and then before too long, usually somewhere around the end of the first period, the start of the second period, it starts to fizzle out a little bit, and they just can't quite get back to that level, and they end up losing the game. Or the exact opposite happens. You have a situation where the Rangers just forget to set their alarms or something. They just don't understand that the game has started, and they give up a couple of goals early. We saw that against Florida. Before you know it, they're in a 2-goal hole, and they eventually find their game. They eventually battle back a little bit, and they battled back at times in this game too. But in the end, it's just not enough, and it feels like every Ranger loss unfolds in one of those two ways, and we saw the first of those two things today. But, you know, as we know, this is not exactly breaking news, but the Rangers have a lot of players that are struggling right now, to say the least, and I wanted to take a look at Ryan Lindgren. You know, he continues to have shaky play pretty much game in and game out. Now, it is worth pointing out that he did suffer what appeared to be, you know, some kind of an injury in this game. I mean, we saw what happened. He took a high stick, and he's down on the ice in front of the Capitals net, and then he gets back up, and he's bleeding. He skates off to the bench. They work on him for a little while, and he eventually returns to the game. First and foremost, this should have been a double minor against the Capitals, because he took a high stick to the face, and there was obviously, a decent amount of blood there, and any amount of blood, it's automatic. That's 4 minutes, and nothing was called on the play. So great job by the officials there. But, you know, the trainers were looking at me, eventually went back out there. But then, you know, just more subpar play. You know, he just has not had a good season. I think this is pretty easily the worst season we've ever seen from Ryan Lindgren as a member of the New York Rangers. He had a really bad penalty in a really bad situation in the game to take a penalty, really, of any kind. But you've got a situation here where the Rangers are back in the game. It's now 3-2. They had just scored. Sam Carrick had scored off of a turnover by Alex Ovechkin. They get the puck to the Rangers to Carrick. He's got like a 10-foot breakaway. He's right in front of the net, and he scores. And okay, that's Carrick's first goal since opening night. Maybe we got something here. We can get back into this game. And then within seconds of the ensuing faceoff, the shift that followed the goal, we've got Ryan Lindgren from his own zone shooting the puck up over the glass out of play. Just a clear as day delay of game penalty. And then the Capitals make the Rangers pay for it. And the Rangers during this power play, the interesting part about this to me is that while the Rangers are shorthanded here, they generated a ton of scoring chances, but it just didn't lead to anything. You know, they weren't able to score. And then in the, final 40 or 30 seconds, whatever it was, of this power play for the Capitals, they get a redirection goal by McMichael, and that makes it 4-2 with less than 2 minutes to go. So this was just a backbreaker. And I know, you know, the Rangers came back a couple more times in this game, but that's just it. You know, they were always down by 2 goals, down by 1 goal, down by 2 goals, down by 1 goal. That's pretty much how the entire game unfolded once the Capitals went up 3-1. And in this instance here, you know, you had a great opportunity if you're the Rangers to come back in this game because, you know, you had just scored a goal. You're feeling it, even shorthanded. You know, the Rangers produced some scoring chances, but then the Capitals got the one chance, and that's all that it took. And the Rangers are shorthanded because Ryan Lindgren, for some reason, shot the puck over the glass and out of play. I mean, you just can't take penalties like this, especially against a good team at a critical spot in the game, as this was. And it's one of those penalties that just cannot and should not happen. you might be asking yourself, if you missed this game, that the question that might be going through your head right now might be, did Ryan Lindgren lose any playing time due to this obvious mistake here? And obviously, no, he did not, because his name is not Zac Jones. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but Lindgren has made some pretty rough plays this season, and I don't know that I've seen a single instance where he's lost any significant ice time or even his next shift. In this game, he ends up with 16 minutes, 22 seconds. That was second among Ranger defensemen, only to Adam Fox and K'Andre Miller. And don't worry, we're going to get to K'Andre Miller in just a little bit as well. But, Lindgren at the end of this game, he's a -2. Fox is a -3. Fox, again, just not looking like his old self. It's funny because I thought Fox at the start of this game actually looked really good. He was out there, creating some scoring chances, battling for pucks, doing all the things that you'd want to see a Ranger leader do. And then his performance kind of fizzled out, as did the performance of the Ranger team. And that goes back to something that we talked about just a couple of minutes here, where they can start games hot, but then, they give out before too long. And it's obviously not a formula for winning. I mentioned Zac Jones just a second ago. We might as well talk about this now. Jones is on the ice for warmups in this game, but did not end up playing. And just in general, this doesn't really have to do with Zac Jones. That's got to be rough, right? I mean, you're out there on the ice, all dressed, ready to go, going through your warmups, stretching, taking shots, doing whatever you do before a game. And then you back into the locker room and you're not playing. So at that, how does that work? Do they have to, do they shower and then change back into their suit? I mean, they're all revved up and ready to go. And then, nope, you're not playing. Head back up to the press box and put your suit back on. So that's obviously unfortunate for any player. But look, bottom line, Zac Jones should be in this lineup. He should be, but he won't be. And I think that's the most depressing aspect of this entire thing, because I'm getting to the point, and I'm sure a lot of you are probably there with me, where it's I don't even feel like I have the energy to fight this anymore, because I've just kind of accepted that Zac Jones is not going to play for this team. As I've mentioned multiple times in recent episodes, Jones is only allowed to play in this lineup if there are literally zero other viable alternatives. And now that they've got, Vakanainen and Borg in there, those guys are ahead of him. Miller and Lindgren continue to play just awful the entire season. They're never going to be moved behind Zac Jones. They're never going to be healthy scratched. So it's just really unfortunate. And to further illustrate my point here, as far as why I think Zac Jones should be in there, I mean, the simple reason is I feel like at worst, he's been their third best defenseman this season. I've mentioned that multiple times in the past, but let's look at the stats here. Okay. Let's check out the numbers, and I'll explain through that another reason why I think Jones should be out there over Lindgren, over Vakanainen, whoever you want to put him out there. Bottom line, he should be in the lineup. But this is the amount of goals that the Rangers have allowed in their last 5 games, beginning with the most recent game today and going back to the least recent game. So are you ready for this? This is the total amount of goals that the Rangers have given up. 7 earlier today, 7 goals. I know one was an empty netter, but bottom line, 7 goals were given up. The game before that, 1 goal given up. That was the game where obviously Jonathan Quick stood on his head and bailed out his defense on multiple occasions. The game before that, 5 goals allowed by the Rangers. The game before that, 6 goals allowed by the Rangers. And the game before that, 5 goals allowed by the New York Rangers. The Rangers have allowed 5 or more goals in 4 of their last 5 games. 5 or more goals allowed in 4 of their last 5 games. And hey, when your defense is playing that well, I'm sorry, man, there's just no room for somebody like Zac Jones to get into the lineup, right? I mean, when you've got 6 defensemen that are going out there and killing it the way that these guys are, there's just, you can't make any changes. There's no way you can possibly do that. Wouldn't want to upset the apple cart of this just brilliant defense that the Rangers have been playing recently, right? It's just ridiculous. Hey, I mean, look, if they put in Zac Jones, instead of giving up 6 or 7 goals, they may give up 8 or 9 goals, right? That's probably what would happen, right? Look, Zac Jones, I'm not making it sound like he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's not. But he has clearly outplayed a lot of these guys, including Ryan Lindgren and including a defenseman that we're going to talk about in just a second, and that is K'Andre Miller. I mean, his fall off at this point needs to be studied in a lab somewhere, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the everydayers. As always, it means the world to me that you guys continue to stick it out with me on this podcast. Just stick it out with Ranger hockey in general right now, because obviously things have not been going very well recently, to put it very mildly. But Rangers going to be back in action tomorrow, Sunday. They play at 3 o'clock at the Chicago Blackhawks, who beat the Rangers. I think it was 2-1 in their last meeting. So, I mean, they got to win that one, right? I don't think anything is guaranteed at this point, but you obviously keep your fingers crossed that the Rangers can figure out a way to knock off the absolute juggernaut that is the Chicago Blackhawks. But we will see. And either way, we'll be back to discuss that in the next episode. But for today, let's keep the focus on this game. And let's keep the focus on somebody I mentioned just a second ago, and that would be K'Andre Miller. He continues to make mistakes, just play a form of hockey that I don't think is going to endear himself to Ranger fans or really any fan base, because he's obviously got size, he's obviously very strong, and it just feels like there's way too many games where he just does not use that to his advantage, or at least not nearly as much as he could. And there were a couple of goals that the Rangers gave up in this game where, I think Miller had a lot to do with it. The more obvious of the two was the Ovechkin goal that gave the Capitals a 5-3 lead. In this situation, you've got the Rangers taking a defensive zone draw. Vincent Trocheck is out there. He wins it back to his right to Miller, and Miller just completely whiffs on the puck. Ovechkin comes over, picks it up, and scores from the doorstep. Now, I will say, this is a little bit of a tough spot here. You could maybe make the argument, and I think Ray Ferraro mentioned this on the broadcast, that Trocheck should have tried to maybe, win the face-off into the corner, done something a little bit different on the face-off circle there, and rather than, winning it back to his defenseman who's right in front of the net. Anytime you play the puck in the exact direction of your own net, it's never really a good thing. But look, the bottom line, Vincent Trocheck, this was a clean face-off win. That's supposed to be a good thing. And if you're K'Andre Miller in this situation, you got to be aware. You should know what Trocheck is looking to do in the first place, but you need to make yourself think. Whatever you think Trocheck might do on the dot here, you got to make yourself think, if you're Miller, okay, the puck is coming to me. Because worst case scenario, it doesn't go to you, and okay, at least I was ready. But here, he's got to anticipate this puck coming to him. It just felt like, watching this replay, and I can't say this for sure, to be completely fair to Miller, but it just looked like he wasn't really ready for it here. He got caught a little bit flat-footed, just wasn't really ready to play the puck, and it got through him. I think it hit off of his skate. He basically just whiffed on the puck with his stick, and it deflects over to the other side of the net, and Ovechkin picks it up. Miller can't get over there to defend Ovechkin, and Ovechkin scores. And just like that, another one of these back-breaking goals where it feels like the Rangers are back in it, down 4-3. Maybe this can be the big win that this team has been searching for a long, long time now. A character win where you're down by 2 goals on the road against a division-leading opponent. You can come back and win. They were in the game. It's not to say everything the Rangers were doing was perfect, but when you give up goals like this, the Lindgren goal, when he took the penalty for delay of game that led to a Capitals power play goal and gave them their 2-goal lead back. And then here it's the same thing. Miller has a miscue. And again, that 1-goal lead, during which, the Rangers had picked it up a little bit. A couple of times where maybe it looked like they were getting close to tying it. Never happened. But then you give up a goal like this, and it's just a backbreaker. And the Rangers did eventually, once again, cut it back down to a 1-goal lead. We had the breakaway goal by Philip Heel, and we do have to give props to Vakanainen. He made a really nice pass out of his zone on this play. But very predictably, if you've watched this team the last couple of years, this is something that's been a problem over and over and over again. The shift that follows a goal or the immediate aftermath of a goal. Again, the Rangers give it right back. It's 6-4. And in this situation, I don't know. I mean, I can't completely crush Miller for this one, but let's just go through the play and then I'll give you my thoughts on it. So again, 5-4 Capitals. Less than a minute after the Rangers cut it down to 5-4, the Capitals scored to make it 6-4. There's a shot off the post. The puck's basically just laying there in the crease. And I just don't feel like Miller went after this the way that he should have. And Poitras ends up burying it. If you're a defenseman there, the puck has hit the post. It's in the crease. I don't think Quick even really knew exactly where it was. If you're a defenseman in this situation, you have to go in there like a bat out of hell, like your life depends on it, doing everything you can to keep the puck out of the net. I realize it doesn't do you any good if you go flying in there and knock the puck into your own net. So maybe that's what Miller was thinking, that he didn't want to do that. But still, I got to see a little bit more aggression from Miller. Whoever on the Rangers is in this spot, in this situation, the puck is laying in your crease. You got to get back there. You got to do everything possible to keep your opponent from getting there, even if you have to take a penalty. I mean, it's not ideal, but it obviously beats the alternative. And instead, Miller goes back there and just kind of takes a swipe at the puck, doesn't really get anything on it, and the Capitals put it into their own net. And this is one of those things where it's more about aesthetics than any like kind of stat or like metric or anything like that. But I feel like there's a lot of goals recently that the Rangers are giving up where this is the situation. We see a goal scored from in deep, and K'Andre Miller is standing there in or somewhere near the crease. And I just don't think he's doing enough to get those guys out of there. It goes back to something that I mentioned just a second ago. This is somebody that very strong, very athletic, clearly has a certain amount of talent. We saw that early in his NHL career. Obviously, a certain amount of strength as well. Just doesn't use it to his advantage nearly as much as he could and nearly as much as he should. And I don't know, man. It's just wild to see how far he's fallen, I would say, in the last 2 years specifically. For a while there, this is year 5 for K'Andre Miller, for everybody that needs a refresher and to kind of give you guys some context here. Early in his career, and he debuted, I think he was 20 when he debuted, I looked at him as this dude is going to be a pillar of Ranger hockey. This is going to be like one of like the 4 or so faces of Ranger hockey going forward. Not right away, things would have to happen, and obviously certain star players would eventually move on, their contracts would run up, things like that. But eventually you could get to the point where, K'Andre Miller is like the 3rd or 4th longest tenured Ranger, and he's somebody that's established himself as a star on the blue line, somebody that, is a top pair defenseman, possibly. You do Miller Fox, maybe that's your top pairing for a whole bunch of years, and it just has not happened. And for a while there, it felt like Miller was plateauing, and now it feels like he's just falling in the opposite direction. It's just unbelievable because there's no logical explanation for it. And to compare him with some other Ranger defensemen who have come under fire from this fan base, we're going to talk about Trouba, obviously an ex-Ranger, but it'll work for the comparison here, and Lindgren, who we talked about in the last section. With Trouba, as soon as the Rangers traded for him, I think most people were happy about it, but there was a little bit of, $8 million a year for this guy for 7 years. I mean, that felt pretty steep. Given the fact that he played for Winnipeg before that, I think it's also a situation, though, where a lot of us probably hadn't seen him play a whole lot. So, okay, this guy must be really good. And look, Trouba had some good stretches for the Rangers. He was part of a lot of winning. He was the captain for some of that as well. But, my God, like, at no point during his Ranger tenure was he an $8 million per year defenseman. And I think a lot of us realized that pretty early. I think a lot of us realized that, okay, this guy is clearly at least somewhat overrated and at least somewhat overpaid. And then that obviously became very, very apparent in the final days of Jacob Trouba as a New York Ranger. So at least with Trouba, you kind of see early, like, well, the Rangers, they've really kind of messed this up here, at least a little bit. And with Ryan Lindgren, we just got done talking about him. With him, though, you can look at certain like aspects of his career so far and sort of connect some dots and understand why he's fallen off. One of the more obvious reasons is it just seems like the injuries have piled up. This guy just looks, beaten up out there. He takes an absolute beating. You got to respect him for that on one hand. But, I mean, this is coming to fruition very quickly here, where Ryan Lindgren's game is not aging all that gracefully, and it's something that a lot of people predicted. I kind of felt the same way. I didn't think it would happen this early because he is still, I think, just 26 years old. But you can at least appreciate that, like, okay, I mean, I'm not excusing the play of Trouba when he was here. I'm not excusing the play of Ryan Lindgren, but you can at least connect the dots and see why this might be happening. And with Lindgren, one more thing about him, the very simple fact that, he's played with Adam Fox for a big majority of his career. And, that helps anybody. I think any defenseman in the league would probably want to be partners with Adam Fox, and Ryan Lindgren was probably elevated by that. But with Miller, there's no explanation. Why is this happening? 2 years into his career, again, I thought he was going to be on this team for a decade. I thought he was going to be a rock. I thought he was going to be one of those guys. You just put him in the lineup. You don't worry about it. K'Andre Miller's going to go out there. He's going to do his thing. Instead, he's not good defensively. He's not physical enough. All of his offensive weaponry has disappeared. His puck handling skills are not there anymore. He doesn't clear guys out of the crease. I don't get it. I don't understand the sudden fall off. He played with some edge early in his career. He was going out there early in his career as a rookie, getting in the face of Sidney Crosby. And I don't know, man. It just it's unbelievable how far he's fallen. And this is as good of a time as any to remind everybody that Keandre Miller wants a significant raise after this season is over. So let that sink in for a second. I'll give you a minute to let that marinate. But he's in the final year of a 2-year deal right now that is paying him $3.87 million per season. He's an RFA with arbitration rights when the season ends. So bottom line, this goes one of two ways for the Rangers with Keandre Miller. Either they extend him and they give him at least some kind of a raise. I don't know if it's going to be a significant raise, but, he gets a pay bump and maybe he's around like $5 million per season. They do that, and then he just continues to struggle and never reaches his full potential, and frankly, never gets back to the level that he was playing at a 21-year-old. But that also makes me think that this could unfold the other way, the second way this could go, where the Rangers at the end of the season, or even before the end of the season, decide, you know what? He's not part of our long-term future. We don't want to give him this big pay raise. It's not a good investment, so we're going to trade him. If the Rangers do that, you guys know as well as I do that he'll find his game, he'll reach his potential, or at least get near his potential with some other team. He'll probably work his way back into the Metro Division and end up on the Penguins or the Flyers or one of these other teams here and burn the Rangers for years. It just, the way things are going right now, I try to be optimistic on here. I try to always be glass half full, but the way things have gone recently for this franchise, it feels like it's going to unfold with Keandre Miller in one of those two different ways. But the way things stand right now, and I was hoping that when Miller came back, he would kind of have a fresh start. He hasn't played well since he's been back from the injury, but the way things stand right now, I can't justify the Rangers giving him $5 million, $6 million per season. If you guys feel differently, definitely, feel free to let me know, obviously, but his fall off is hard to explain. Very, very hard to explain. I mean, and again, you could say the same thing for a lot of players on this Ranger team, because I don't think anybody other than Will Cooley, and we got to throw Philip Hedl in there too. I don't think anybody other than those two is having a better season this year than they had last year. Top to bottom, left to right, up, down the lineup, guys that are in the lineup, guys that are out of the lineup, star players or supposed star players, role players, whoever it might be. It just feels like everybody other than Cooley and Hedl have taken a step backward this season. And, that's also kind of why I don't like, hyper focusing on Lindgren and Miller. But the way this game went and the mistakes that they made, I just felt like I had to. If there's other Ranger players that are driving you nuts lately and you want me to talk about them in a future episode, certainly feel free to let me know that as well, because we got to be fair on here for sure. But in just a second, I want to shift our attention to a couple of controversial calls in this game that really did not help the Rangers. I'm going to have some thoughts on a couple of those. We will do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to all of us. We've all had a few subscriptions that we didn't even realize we were still paying for, and Rocket Money makes it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, let's go keep everything rolling on Locked On New York Rangers. And I wanted to close out today's episode by talking a little bit about some of the controversial calls that were made in this game. And let me just say right at the top of this section here, when things are going as bad as they're currently going for the New York Rangers, I think the last thing you need is for the Toronto Situation Room to get involved and for a lot of 50-50 calls to start going against you. Not to say the Rangers were brilliant in this game. I'm not even going to put the outcome of this on the referees. But again, a couple of these situations did not help the Rangers at all. The first of which was a non-interference penalty that was called when Jonathan Quick was attempting to make a save. Now, this one doesn't bother me as much as the second one because I'm not so sure that this really should have been interference. I mean, there's so much gray area on these calls anymore. But the bottom line, the Caps are on a power play, and you've got a scramble in the crease after Quick had made a save. Ovechkin dives in there, makes some contact with Quick. The puck stays out. The Capitals keep possession. There's a shot, another save. A rebound is buried. It's 1-1. Quick was furious. He didn't think he was allowed to play his position. He shot the puck down the ice. There was a brief stoppage there. He was all fired up. Quick actually went over to the Ranger bench, I believe, to converse with Phil Housley and try to get them to maybe challenge the play. The Rangers chose not to. And honestly, in this one, I don't think, well, I know that it very likely was not going to get overturned. I know that because it's the Rangers challenging it. And we know this doesn't go well for them. That's first and foremost. But beyond that, if I'm being completely honest here, it did look like there was some contact between Ovechkin and Quick, but Quick had gotten back up. He was back in position, playing the goalie spot. And, it's unfortunate, obviously. And I do think the Rangers made the right decision here because I just don't think Toronto was going to overturn this. And you would have ended up shorthanded. This did tie the game at 1-1 late in the first period, but the Rangers had played really well up to this point. And I just think it's a situation where, okay, let's not make this worse. Let's not challenge this, get a delay a game, and then they've got the opportunity to score another goal before the first period ends. And then you really have that here we go again kind of a feeling where you dominate the entire first period or most of it, and then you're down by, a goal going into the intermission. So I was okay with the Rangers not challenging this, but just unfortunate that this call obviously went against them, the non-interference call. But then the one that, really bothered me, and I think some of you guys as well, the Will Cooley goal that got overturned. On this play, you've got Borgen with a really nice keep in at the blue line. He goes behind the net to Philip Hedl. Hedl passes in front to Cooley. Stuff and goal, 3-2. So the Capitals take a timeout to look at this play more closely and decide whether or not they would like to challenge it. And this sort of sparks a debate in and of itself. Like, should this be allowed? Should you really be allowed to call your timeout in a situation like this to spend more time looking at the replay? Bottom line, that's the rule as of right now. So I have no problem with the Capitals doing this and doing what they did and handling it the way they did. That's a rule that I think maybe should be looked at. I mean, I don't really hate it because you only get one timeout per game anyway. So if you're going to use it here, there's obviously some strategy involved there. Is it worth burning your one timeout to take a longer look at the replay and decide if you're going to challenge it or not? You know what? It's funny, when this was happening, I must have missed the Capitals calling a timeout because I'm watching this and nothing's happening and the puck's not dropping. We're not going on to the next play. And I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, how much time do these guys get to look at the replay? Then I realized they had indeed called their timeout. So it made more sense at that point. Again, we can debate whether that's a good rule or not. I don't really have too much of an issue with it. And obviously that is the rule now. So the Capitals took advantage of it and fair play to them for doing that. But here's another whole other debate of this entire situation here. The offside that was called against the Rangers here was on the initial entry, which was like a solid 20 seconds or so before the goal was scored. And so that begs another question. Like, at a certain point, should a team not be able to go back and review an offside call? Like, I've always wondered about this. Like, if there's a situation here where, say, the Rangers go into the zone and it's offside, but the refs don't call it, they keep playing. The puck comes out of the zone for a little while. Maybe it's in the Ranger zone. Then it goes back into the Capital zone, and then the Rangers score. Can you go back like 2 or 3 minutes earlier in that play to look at the apparent offside? I would think in a situation like that, you would not be allowed to do that because that would just be ridiculous. But yeah, even here, there maybe that's not a bad idea. Where at a certain point, it's to a point where the puck's in the offensive zone long enough, you can't go back and review it. But I don't know. That's a slippery slope too. That's one of those things I would have to think a little bit more about, and you guys can definitely feel free to weigh in on that as well. But the bottom line, they look at the replay. You've got Hedl carrying the puck up the center of the ice, and Berard is on the other side. There weren't many camera angles where you even could really see Berard, or if you could, you couldn't really see his skate, so it was impossible to overturn it based on that. But then they showed one near the end. It's kind of like an overhead camera angle and from behind the play, and it was very, very close. It looked like Berard might have been just ever so slightly offside on this play. But my thing here is when you overturn these, it's supposed to be, you're only supposed to overturn them if they're conclusive. They were reviewing this for 6 or 7 or 8 minutes. This went on and on and on. At a certain point, is there no cutoff? If it takes you that long to determine that this is conclusive, then very clearly it's not conclusive and it shouldn't be overturned. We're really splitting hairs. I mean, that was as close as it gets. It's one of those things where if they called it offside during the live play, then obviously the goal never would have been scored because the whistle would have blown. But you know what I'm saying here, right? It's one of those things where it's like, I don't think there's enough either way in that situation to look at that and say that's 100% offside or that's 100% onside. And that being the case, I don't know. When you look at it for that long, to me, you can't then say we have, irrefutable, conclusive evidence that this play was offside. That's just my 2 cents on it. Was Berard offside? Might have been just by a smidge, but either way, you can't look at that and tell me that it's conclusive. So, look, the Rangers have bigger problems than the referees, and I'm certainly not going to sit here and blame the entire loss on the refs. But like I said, when it rains, it pours. You get this kind of anything that can go wrong will go wrong kind of a situation. And anytime that it goes to Toronto, anytime a play is under review, it is impossible as a Ranger fan to think or to expect that when the ref comes back to the ice, gets off the headset, puts his microphone on, that there's going to be anything even resembling good news for the New York Rangers. It's just not going to happen, and it's especially not going to happen now when things are as bad recently as they have been. A couple of quick thoughts here before we call it. I am currently watching the World Juniors. It's the third period. We've got USA up 2-1 against Czechia. If they win this, they go to the gold medal game tomorrow, and they will play Finland for the crown. Finland defeated Sweden 4-3 in overtime a little bit earlier today. And Gabe Perreault has the first goal off of a feed by Ryan Leonard in this game. Leonard, basically dove to get the puck over to Perreault, and then Perreault with some fancy stick work on the doorstep. And I think most people know Perreault, but he's obviously a former first rounder by the Rangers. So looking forward to watching the end of this game once we're done here. Couple other thoughts. I think we're getting Louis Domingue in net against the Blackhawks tomorrow. If Quick had gone out there and just absolutely killed it for the Rangers and led them to another win, then I think maybe it might be tempting to just go right back to him. Although even there, 3 games in 4 days for Quick, that's a lot. The fact that the Rangers lost, Quick gave up 6 goals, I think it's a pretty good bet. You're going to see Louis Domingue make his season debut tomorrow. So hopefully the Rangers can muster up the energy to play some halfway decent defense in front of Louis Domingue. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think they have it in them? I guess we'll find out. One other stat here that's just crazy, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier in the episode. The Rangers, after today's game, 13 games this season with 5 or more goals allowed. That is the most in the NHL. That is incredible for so many different reasons. One other thought that I had here, too, Artemi Panarin, he's somebody else we're going to have to talk about, in an upcoming episode. He just has nothing right now. He just is a complete non-factor out there. Again, it goes back to something that I was talking about. There are just an infinite number of players on this Ranger team that have taken a step back from last season. They're not giving you anywhere near what you thought you would get from them this season, and really, he's become one of them. That line I thought had a really shaky afternoon, just not enough scoring opportunities, and it's another loss for the Rangers. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to get in touch, send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well at LO_NY_Rangers. And thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.